This is Proxy Countdown. Welcome to the big show for the week of December 18th, alongside my tag team partner, Matt Moscardi. I'm Damian Rollis. On today's countdown, another CEO is going to jail.
Boo.
Two notable pre-Christmas Golden Hello Again awards for CEOs that sell radios and tasers. The ongoing proxy cage fight at Disney. Lazy shareholders at 1-800-Flowers. And a big vote at America's second most folksy company. Let's start with our trade wire top stories. Nikola founder, former CEO Trevor Milton was sentenced to 4 years in prison for defrauding investors of the electric and hydrogen-powered truck maker. Milton was found guilty last October on 2 counts of wire fraud and 1 count of securities fraud. So, Matt, it's not just women going to jail for fraud, perpetrating fraud as CEOs.
Although it was Milton's lawyer who blamed Elizabeth Holmes, who said Trevor Milton is not as bad as Elizabeth Holmes, and that's why he should get a lighter sentence. That was Milton's lawyer.
Last week, the Nikola board appointed Jonathan Perchik, CEO of Travel Centers of America. Is he a Milton antidote or something? I wonder if the timing is significant.
He's not a Milton antidote. In fact, what it is pure discrimination on the part of Nikola's board. And this is discrimination against dudes with hair. Steve Gursky, who's the CEO who took over for Milton, he has 51% of the influence. He bats an all-time low of 0.062 overall. 0.062. 0.500 is the average director, a 500 batting director. He actually was the funder behind the fraudster Milton. He won the lottery getting to run this company as Milton goes to jail, but it turns out he's straight up racist against hair. Not only is this board 88% male, they only could find 1 woman to put on the board, but it's 63% bald. And the academic research actually shows that people bond with people who look like them faster. And Gursky took that to heart. He's only looking for bald men to add to the board, and John Perchik fits the bill. Can we just find 1 woman to break up the bald boys club here?
Or just a man with beautiful hair.
Either way, I'll settle.
And another top story, sadly, another director has died. Tecogen board member Fred Hollabaugh. In new directors, Johnson & Johnson added Best Buy director Eugene Woods. Union Pacific appointed former Army Colonel and Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security John Tien. So think twice, Matt, if you're planning a big train robbery.
My heist is off.
Hyatt Hotels appointed Bath and Body Works director Alessandro Bogliolo. Alessandro is the former CEO at Tiffany's. This guy just oozes soft skin and high thread counts and blood diamonds. Really,
wow.
This is the luxury man right there, Alessandro.
You put him on the Hyatt. I'm going nowhere but Hyatt now. I'm just going to roll around in rubies.
And finally, Leidos Holdings appointed FedEx director and retired Vice Admiral Nancy Ann Norton. So 2 former military people appointed to boards at the Fortune 500 companies.
I will say this about that. I was told by an insider that when you see a military person on the board, if it is not a defense manufacturer of some kind, the reason why they're adding them is they're a guaranteed rubber stamp vote for the CEO. These are not people who are there to make waves. They're there to effectively say thank you and be a part of the process. Now, that might be unfair, but that was told to me by an insider, so I'm always dubious of it.
In executive changes, HP is making a switch at CFO, replacing Marie Myers with Tim Brown. Marie lasted less than 3 years. Matt, average CFO tenure in the Fortune 500 is less than 5 years.
Which is probably not a good sign if you're a succession planner.
Angela Arman is the new CEO at Kilroy Realty, on top of a welcome package that includes $4 million. She is receiving $15,000 per month for temporary housing, $200,000 in relocation fees, and it's a new one to me, quote, any deposits or tuition for private schools for her children for the current school year that cannot be recovered, end quote.
Wow.
It's very specific.
Yeah, that negotiation was what? My kids are already enrolled in the school. I can't get the money back. Can you refund me for it? But we're talking about she just got a $4 million welcome package. The $20,000 you spent to send your kid to private school seems like the least of your concerns, doesn't it?
Former CEO and the founder's son, John Kilroy Jr., will remain as chair. So have fun with that, Angela. Okay, John Jr., bear with me, Matt, will receive a $92,000 a month consulting fee until the annual meeting, and then we'll receive $80,000 per month consulting fee. Don't you just
done?
Don't you love the needless precision there? Also, I like this. The monthly consulting fee will increase by $15,000 in certain circumstances where John Jr. no longer receives administrative support from the company. So does that mean that if he
administrative support?
Right, so if he loses access to the fax machine, they'll give him $15,000 in cash.
Yeah, somebody no longer transfers his calls for him, then he gets an extra $15K.
Wait, there's more. John Jr. is also getting a $16 million golden parachute, and he will get $70,000 more just to stay on the board until the meeting. After the meeting, he will receive full director pay, which is about $300,000. All this despite currently holding about $70 million in company equity. I'm exhausted.
Wait a minute. Back that struck up. He's getting $70,000 retainer to stay
hang
on the
around
board,
until the
just
meeting.
Hang around, but he's also getting a $92,000 a month consulting fee until the meeting, where he still gets $80,000. What's the retainer for? What are we paying for? What kind of performance are we getting out of this guy?
This is why you should take the data seriously of who controls the influence on the board. John Jr., the founder's son, controls 50% of the influence at Kilroy Realty.
There it is.
And
there's your answer.
And at Booking Holdings, they have a new CFO, Ewart Steenburgen. He's getting a golden hello of $9 million in equity, $1 million in cash just to show up.
Let's just say if CFOs are turning over at the rate that you're saying in less than 5 years, a golden hello for a CFO seems like a pretty bad deal. Well, you're not recouping that money.
I don't, if you notice, the average tenure of a CFO in the Fortune 500 is about the period, about the vesting period for most of these golden hello awards, about 5 years.
Cash out, baby. Cash in, cash out. There's like player transfers in the NBA.
Other notable board resignations include board chair Robert Spurry at Mettler Toledo. Bob is a powerful dude in our database. He controls 41% of board influence at Bystronic, 37% at Mettler Toledo, and 21% at Sonova. Former PayPal CEO Dan Schulman has left the building. Current CEO Alex Chris can wear whatever he wants now to the board meetings. According to reports, the PayPal board bungled the succession process, which officially began last January when Dan Schulman announced his retirement. But he is gone. He's off the board, completely gone from the company. And finally, Catherine Minyard stepped down at Oventive. She's been on the board for 2 years, but something tells me that when she saw our data and the fact that she controls 0.2% of influence, she suffered an existential crisis.
Yikes, 0.2%.
And finally, in our trade wire, we got a few money stories to relay. It's Golden Hello Again season. So, Matt, a Golden Hello award is what you get when you are hired. A Golden Hello Again, which I think Paul Hodgson coined the phrase, is when they say hello again with more money for no apparent reason. So, at Sirius XM Radio, CEO Jennifer Witz is getting $17 million in options, $3 million restricted shares, $13 million in performance shares. She's getting use of a company car. She's getting 30 hours of jet use. And she's also getting a raise, Matt, up to $2 million in base salary. Again, she's already been CEO. This is just a little extra something for Jennifer Witt. And at Axon Enterprise, a company that makes tasers, CEO Patrick Smith received a one-time grant of worth $150 million in something I've never heard of before, something called Exponential Stock Units, XSU. So he's getting $150 million just for sticking around.
Yeah, XSUs were modeled after Elon Musk's pay package from 2018. So basically now we're modeling pay packages for someone who makes tasers after the richest man in the world.
Let's move on to our proxy cage matches. The big news this week comes out of the proxy battle at Disney versus Trian. Trian finally announced its nominees to Disney's board. Two nominees. First, there's Trian's own founder and CEO, Nelson Petlz. And then there's Disney's former CFO, Jay Rasulo. So two nominees to the board there at Disney.
Look, this is the ultimate troll to Iger. There is nothing more trolly than these picks, right? So first of all, Petlz said he has a, quote, unparalleled performance as a director. He is literally paralleled, according to our data. He bats overall .501. He bats 501. The average director bats 500. He is the average director. Even his TSR is 537, which is almost exactly average. Petlz should be busying himself removing his son from the Wendy's board before tossing out things like, quote, leadership succession as one of his core skills. He's not putting on an all-star performer. What he is an activist putting himself on. That's what that is. Meanwhile, Rasulo, who is the second Jay Rasulo, was Disney's former CFO. Rasulo stepped down or was pushed out after he was passed over for Iger's succession planning in 2015. In fact, Rasulo was replaced by Christine McCarthy, who's now left Disney, but who staged the coup against Bob Chapek and brought Iger back in the past year. This is a troll by Petlz. The losses in streaming and Disney's losses and underperformance in movies, the linear television losses, Rasulo's background was in parks, not in any of those things. And he was Chapek before there was Chapek. Petlz says he wants to, quote, get back to the way it was, but totally ignoring the fact that Netflix exists now and ESPN used to be a cash cow, but no one watches TV anymore. And Disney's big innovation at parks at the time was a wristband that allowed you to wait for 3 hours for a ride instead of 4. This isn't about performance savvy. This is about a guy that Iger passed over who probably is still sour grapes about it, getting put on a board by an activist. He could have named anyone. He could have found someone on the Netflix board. He could have found someone like Jack Ma. He could have found someone in AI or tech. Imagine if he reached out to the Apple board and said, you guys are using the Vision Pro. Disney's going to make that a centerpiece of our deep diving experience of the future. No, what he wants is a blast from the Michael Eisner past. This is the stupidest bunch of activism I've seen. He had a chance to do something pretty cool here, but now I'm vote against Petlz. Vote against them. This is not great.
Let's move on to our vote results table. Two stories to update you on. Let's start with a company we talked about last week, Palo Alto Networks, where ISS and Glass Lewis were targeting pay. And Glass Lewis was also targeting directors Aparna Bawa and Lorraine Toohill, two women there. So here are the results from that vote. Say on Pay failed decisively. Only 38% of shareholders said yes. However, both of the directors targeted by Glass Lewis were reelected with about 86% of the vote.
Quick question for you. Did anyone on the pay committee get a negative vote?
I believe that No, I mean, one of those women was on the pay committee, so whichever it is, she got about 86% of the yes vote.
So we hate the pay, but love the people who said it.
Only 4 directors up for a vote at Palo Alto Networks. They have a classified board. And at 1-800-Flowers, shareholders have decided they are either too busy or don't like to be bothered, or both, as they have decided to punt their annual say-on-pay vote to every 3 years. A full 95% of shareholders at 1-800-Flowers have decided that reading the company's pay report every year is just too much of a burden.
I mean, it's really hard to, read the 700 words about do you approve pay or not every year.
It made me think about my own life. Well, what am I doing? I read these pay reports daily. I don't know why they can't once a year. All right, Matt, let's move on to the big vote. The company in focus today is what I'm calling potentially America's second most folksiest company. Berkshire Hathaway, without a doubt, at least until Warren Buffett dies, is absolutely America's darling, folksiest company. In fact, they are so true to who they are that even when you go to their website, it is not a website. It looks like it's from 1974. It is basically 17 hyperlinks. That's how true they are to their folksy roots. But Costco might not be far behind. Costco has an annual meeting coming up January 18th, 2024. Before I ask Matt what he thinks about the board, let me give you a few highlights. No big ownership people to know about here at Costco. Vanguard controls 9%, BlackRock 7%, but there's no one else other than that. Overall, you talked about performance with some of the other companies today. Overall, Costco bats 389, which is low, right? Below the average of 500.
Below average, sure.
What really stands out is earnings, where they're hitting 166. However, in shareholder return, which is the interesting part, they're actually hitting 624, which is high.
It's strong.
They tell a good story at Costco, and it clearly has an effect on the market. There is a big CEO succession happening at Costco. COO Ron Vakris has been elected to succeed Craig Jelinek. This is going to happen on January 1st. And the other big news is that Charlie Munger, the aforementioned Berkshire Hathaway, Charlie Munger, a longtime director at Costco, passed away last month. So that, again, another connection to Berkshire and why I think Costco might be the second folksiest company. So that's the background at Costco.
Well, I'll add to that background just a little bit here. That it looks like future ex-CEO Craig Jelinek is staying on the board also. This is not a company, to your folksy point, this is not a company that pivots. Even their website looks like a steel box that sells 300-pound jars of pickles. It is Grandpa's cheap bulk goods warehouse. That's what it is.
Firmly ensconced in a brick and mortar world, right? I don't believe they even have an online retail that I know of.
Well, they do have e-commerce, and it does bring in some of their money. And in fact, the SKUs that they have, I think they had 14,000 in the earnings call. They had 14,000 products effectively they're selling through e-com, and only 4,000 or 5,000 in store. So they've vastly they're selling vastly more products online than in store. But the online experience is effectively the online experience from Amazon in 2004. I mean, they haven't advanced.
Coded by Charlie Munger.
I think Munger was on the original coding team. They don't have plans to reduce, but they are heavily brick and mortar. The vast majority of their money comes from the brick and mortar, and they don't have plans to reduce energy costs. 79% of their warehouses they own, and property is the single largest asset on their balance sheet is property. And they don't have any real plan to reduce the energy costs of those warehouses. This is a company that mints cash by selling rubber chickens. They are inflation protection for customers who are, whenever there's a recession or even the hint of a recession or prices go up, What do? You go to Costco and you buy it in bulk, just like you go to McDonald's.
Extremely
Dollar
loyal,
General.
extremely loyal fan base, I will say about Costco.
And they're, as part of that, they're selling cheap gas that consumers don't actually realize they are subsidizing with the cost of their subscription plan. So it's not exactly cheap gas. You sell exclusivity to the club that offsets the cost of the cheap gas and the cheaper bulk items, right? So Costco isn't vastly different from Walmart in that respect, except they have exclusivity going for them. Mm-hmm. What makes them different is while Walmart is a family-run firm and you think of the Waltons, you don't know who to think of at Costco. The who is what makes it different.
Yeah.
And this is why Munger loved them, because it's actually not a company run by their CEO. It's run by their longtime CFO, Richard Galanti. The CEO doesn't even show up to the earnings calls anymore. Like, it's only Galanti. All year it's been Galanti doing it.
Galanti's been on the board since 1995, since the Clinton administration.
He's 28-year tenure. He's second only to Hamilton Tony James, who has a 34-year tenure on this board.
Yeah, Hamilton James is the chair. Hamilton James is the chair. He was formerly the lead independent director. Been on the board since the Bush Senior administration.
Here is an exchange. If you want to know how the board thinks, how Galanti thinks, and they move, this is an exchange. I'll quote from an earnings call. This is their March earnings call. This is Costco's view of the future. Scott Mushkin, who's an analyst, asks, and just curious, and maybe this is a silly question, what happens with the gas business, especially in California, with the push to EVs? And Richard Galanti, the CFO, been there for 28 years, says, it's a long road ahead. We only have 11 car washes, so we have plenty of room for car washes 30 years from now. But at the end of the day, we think it's a very long road. It's not happening in the next few years. And the fact that we're still taking such market share relative to U.S. gas gallons in general is a positive. So I think it's a question that we can defer for 5 or 10 years, frankly. That's how they're thinking.
Maybe I'm sucked into the folksiness of all this, man. I find it hard not to love Costco by everything you're telling me. In fact, we were saying just yesterday that I don't think that CEOs should be allowed to dominate their boards here. And you're telling me this is a board not dominated by its CEO.
Well, it's also, I think it screws with like our stats a little bit.
Okay.
I measured the old school influence on this board, and this is all the directors who have been there for at least 10 years. Mm-hmm. Tony James, 34 years, and his name is Hamilton. But he goes by Tony, like Hamiltoni, Tony James. Mm-hmm. Galanti, 28 years. Munger, who just died, was there for 26 years. Sue Decker's been there for 18, Jeff Rakes for 14, and Jelinek had been there for 13 years. That's old school influence of 52% of the board. Effectively, the old guard, who's largely insiders, are controlling the majority of the way this board runs. That doesn't even include the new incoming CEO, Vacris, who will go from a low percentage of influence because he's on the board currently to a much higher as a CEO. Our stats fail because we think Mary Wildrotter is the single most influential person on the board.
Well, potentially for good reason. When you say Maggie Wildrotter, she is a director of directors. Here is some of the. She's currently director at Sana Biotechnology, and she's chair at DocuSign. She was formerly CEO at Frontier Communications. Matt, she held directorships at Xerox, DreamWorks Animation, Cadence Design, Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, Procter & Gamble Company, and Lyft. This is a well-accomplished director who literally knows every director in the universe.
And let me ask you something. The companies you just listed include HP, Xerox. Mm-hmm. Can we think of any older school companies than these companies? The thought methodology.
I can think of one.
Directors.
Procter & Gamble, and that's another one she sat on.
The thought. Frontier Communications literally deals in they're the only ones who offer hardline wires, still phones. These are some of the oldest institutions. It's Ma Bell. I mean, we're talking about the mid late 1900s is where these companies come from that the director sat on. We do know this. Mm-hmm. So we do know that the community concentration of these board members, meaning, when you go on LinkedIn and it says, Jim, you probably also know Jane. We use that same math on the directorships across the entire globe of directors. We know that 91% of the directors on this board belong to the same community. Only one sits outside them, and that's John Stanton. We know that 45% of the board is connected to one another through first or second degrees on other boards. We think that this board type is democratic, but we know that it's deferential to management, giving the power of Galanti on this board. He has lived through, this will be his third CEO in his tenure. He's been CFO almost the entire time with these three CEOs. We know that 79% of the players on this board are rotation players. They're not actually high performers. And we know what they do really, really well. These directors pay dividends. They bat 827 paying dividends. They are some of the biggest dividend payers of any directors in our database. And they also like paying the CEO. 336, they're high-paying directors. Those are the two things they do well, dividends and CEO. They are greasing the palms of shareholders and management. And the result is they are crushing for TSR. They are crushing every competitor. But here are my game time picks.
All right. For the board, Matt's picks for who you should vote in and vote out.
First of all, Hamilton James. I can't get over that his nickname is Tony. It's like
board chair Tony James. Yeah.
If you like nickname King Charles Little Chucky, right? Like Hamilton James. He went to Choate, Harvard. He's an investment banker. He was at Blackstone. He's basically the trustee of every New York City institution. He's worth $3 billion. And he's going with Tony James. Come on.
Street cred.
Come on, Tony.
Are you targeting Tony James to vote out? He's been on the board again since George Bush Sr.
I know the board likes to keep it OG, but 38 years for a non-founder, is incredibly rare. It's time to vote against James.
He's also
time.
Notably might be one of the few directors not tied to the Seattle area.
Correct, which is my second recommendation. Seattle royalty rules here. This is an Issaquah-based, which is a city just outside of Seattle.
Okay.
Issaquah-based company. 46% of the influence on the board is Seattleites. Either they live there, they have their names on buildings there, they're on boards there. They are heavy Democratic donors.
They own their baseball teams, the Seattle Mariners.
They do.
Owner.
They actually own the Mariners. Sally Jewell was interior for Obama. Tony James is actually an Obama donor and was offered the Commerce Secretary role. And there's three insiders on the board. Whether or not they mint money, break up the guaranteed votes of the Seattle royalty and the insiders. I think you vote against Jelinek. The man was the CEO. We do not need an ex-CEO, a current CEO, a 38-year tenured chair, a 28-year tenured CFO on the board. Get rid of somebody, people. Vote against Jelinek.
So vote against Tony James and Jelinek. Anybody else?
That's my picks.
Okay.
Get them off.
All right. That's the board vote there at Costco. Let's move on to Say on Pay. Matt, the most notable, 95% said yes in 2022. You made some reference to CEO pay, but can I just tell you this? Again, this is maybe all the proof you need for why this is the second most folksy company in America. The compensation discussion and analysis section at Costco, it barely exists.
Yeah.
Its number one peer company listed in the proxy is Walmart. Walmart, their discussion runs over 30 pages. At Costco, it's 5 pages, and there's no charts, no nothing. It's just some bland, folksy pay talk. That's it.
The entire proxy is like that. You want to know who's on the committees, you have to read like the paragraph that says...
It's part of the text, right? It's part of the narrative. And
it's 2023.
And I will say this, that whatever the formula is, the average pay over the last 3 years for Craig Jelinek has been about $12 million. The average pay for Walmart CEO Doug McMillon has been about $25 million. So hey, the folksiness might be working a little bit in shareholders' favor.
Don't gloss over the fact that Jelinek has $258 million worth of shares that vest on his retirement. I'm not sure he's exactly hurting for pay. And they're making it in other ways.
And to add to the folksiness at pay at Costco, I will say that all the named executive officers at Walmart received corporate jet benefits. At Costco, their big benefit was $120 for an executive membership card.
Don't be fooled by this folksy.
What's your say on pay, Matt? What's your vote on pay at Costco?
I'm voting for pay. I'm voting for pay mostly because if you're an investor in this company, they have given you exactly what you want, which is the TSR, and you are getting much worse from other executives, right? So you vote for in this case, but don't fall for this folksy bullshit. $120 executive membership card, but $258 million worth of shares that vest when he retires.
Honestly,
any change.
Where I disagree with you is I think the folksy bullshit at Costco is the narrative that is driving its high shareholder return.
Great, it's driving returns, but I'm saying investors, you're smarter than that stupid narrative. Don't buy the fact that all he gets is a $120 executive membership card.
Even our number one anti-consumer in our office, Jessie the Money Whisperer, she talked to me for an hour yesterday about how much she loves Costco. I don't get it. I don't get Costco. I don't understand it.
Everybody loves
Finally,
Costco.
There's an anti-woke, anti-ESG shareholder proposal up for vote at Costco's meeting in January. This is from our friends at the National Center for Public Policy Research. It has one of the stupidest names for proposal I've seen recently: Fiduciary Carbon Emission Relevance Report.
Ooh, fiduciary's in there, though.
Yeah, exactly. So what do you think about this, Matt? How are you voting on this anti-ESG proposal?
Look, this is an easy vote against. This is a stupid shareholder proposal. It has one of the best circular arguments of all time. It claims, here's what they say, that claims about the need for decarbonization at all, especially by some blah, 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 are based on a long series of assumptions that are either counterfactual or insufficiently examined. So they go first against the need to decarbonize. For decades, for instance, claims have been made that action must be taken before some date or it will be too late. If those claims are right, it's too late for decarbonization to matter now, so we should be building up economic resources to deal with climate change. If they're wrong, then the odds are high that current claims are also wrong. So basically they're saying you should do nothing because if we're right, it's too late. And if we're wrong, then we were always wrong, right? It doesn't matter. The board actually said this, though. This is my takeaway. When you have a board full of people who have been there since the Bush administration, this is the way they think about climate change. They said, quote, the board and the company also have noted that the plan, and this is meaning their carbon reduction plan, and others like it, will not now prevent the impacts of global warming, which every day are more evident.
Wow.
The world is now instead in a state of attempting to mitigate and adapt to these impacts. That reality, however, means that efforts should be enhanced, not abandoned.
Wow,
they have already said it's over.
Strong
it's
language
over.
there.
We lost. We lost the climate change.
How are you voting?
Vote against.
That's it. Let me wrap up the Costco vote recommendations, and then we'll wrap up the show. Matt says a vote against Chair Tony James and former CEO he'll be former CEO as of next week after the New Year's. That's Craig Jelinek. Matt's voting yes on Say on Pay and a big no against the anti-woke, anti-ESG shareholder proposal from the National Center for Public Policy Research. That's the proxy countdown for the week of December 18th, 2023. Join us next week, I believe, when we jump back into the alternative democracy pool, forever on the lookout for shareholder sharks, floating band-aids, and wayward